All right, welcome to ABA and ASD. We welcome everyone to this Lunch and Learn. Um, Pam has become a personal friend and she has so much to share with us. Um, we have shared cases. She does some amazing things in our community and other communities as well. And she has so many good concepts to share with us that can give us guidance as we are choosing ABA providers and how we can build meaningful partnerships with our ABA providers. Before we get started, I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping things. Pam, can you go to the next slide?
Sure.
And then the next slide. Next. Next. So for one, I want to make sure everyone knows about CARD's upcoming conference that takes place every January. It's going to take place in Orlando. It usually does. It's an easy drive and it is going to be filled with many great speakers. It's a great chance to network with professionals as well as other families who experience what you do. You can go to the next one. I'm going to remind everyone to please mute. If you are a teacher joining us today, or if you want to share this with your teacher, the Friday of the conference is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The Friday is free for teachers. So
Oh,
please share this. Yeah,
right.
you can uh, you can send families or teachers to that website if they're interested. So just very briefly, you can go to the next slide, Pam. CARD is located at the University of Miami, but we also have a satellite office at Nova. We also have branch offices in Miami Lakes and Miramar. We try to spread ourselves out there, and you can go to the next slide. And we do lots of different things. Um, for if you're a family joining us, for you, we provide technical assistance and we help you find ABA therapists. We help you find resources like OTs, speech. If your child needs a haircut and it's going to be a difficult experience, where can you go? You need a dentist and it's going to be a difficult experience. Where can you go? How can you prepare your child? Sometimes we observe students at school. We often do Zoom meetings, phone calls. We kind of try to do it all to support the families that we serve. So we do lots of different things, but that's really the main thing that I do. I provide that technical assistance. If you go to our website, if you go to the next slide, Pam, right over there, if you go to that website, you can also put your phone up to that QR code. Um, you'll see a whole slew of resources. You can sign up for our newsletter that is sent out every week with many different resources from the community. And you'll also see information about CARD's support groups, trainings. We have a teen group. We have services for adults. So we have lots of different things going on. And if you're not familiar with it, please feel free to go to our website and check that out. And the next slide. So I want to introduce Pam. Pam Pérez-Melms is the clinical outreach specialist for Cultivate Behavioral Health and Education. And she's a board certified behavior analyst and infant toddler developmental specialist. So she is really skilled and competent to be able to share the information she's going to share with us today. Not only is she a professional, she's also a mom, and she has the biggest heart around. So I'm going to turn over the floor to Pam, and I hope you enjoy all the guidance she shares with us today.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. It's my privilege to kind of serve and my biggest life mission and passion to make sure I empower families to advocate for themselves and really be as educated as they can in terms of the process of services. So I've loved working alongside with CARD because I feel like they're such a wonderful resource. So I am very thankful we have that in this community, and please, please, please sign up for CARD and use them throughout the lifespan of your children, because it's such a worthwhile service to really help them be an extra support and guide throughout that. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how to find and work with and partner a qualified and caring ABA provider. I want to just touch on some brief points, kind of understanding what is ABA technically, how does it support your child's development? How do I know that the services are ideal, and how do I find a provider, and then how do I become the best advocate? I will make sure we leave some time and space for Q&A. So please make sure that you know that we will have time for questions and answers. I will do my best to also make sure that we make it a collaborative discussion, because it really is something helpful for you guys to understand. So I will start off with the very, very basics, like, hey, so what is ABA? So if you Google ABA, it'll tell you it is the evidence-based therapy using scientific principles of learning and motivation to effectively teach learners. So I always like to explain things in plain English and not use what we call in our world technical language. So when I'm first speaking to a family, I like them to understand that ABA is just the science behind learning, and our purpose is to improve the quality of life for any individual that we serve. That for the majority of people, they understand that ABA therapy is a specific designated therapy for children with behavioral needs, autism spectrum disorder in specific, but really ABA is just really the science behind learning and behavior, and it really applies to everyone. Trust me, I have even ABA'd. I have a friend who makes a very good killing ABAing with animals. I use it with my husband, with my daughter, with my parents. So it's something that we all follow, just like the laws of physics. In specific, we want to make sure that an ABA program should always be individualized to a person's unique needs. And that's one of the big things I really want to hone in. Everything should be individualized. Each of your children are their own person and story, or each of your students. I'm not quite sure if we have any teachers also here. And we have lots of different types of ABA, which is something that a lot of families don't even know, that can assist your child in learning and thriving to their full potential. I would like to touch on some of these types of ABA, because depending on kind of where your child is in their unique needs and journey, we want to make sure that we serve them using the best and most effective teaching methods. So I'm just going to chat a little bit about different types of learning styles and strategies that we use within ABA. So we have kind of the classic one, the discrete trial training. That's the one that if you Google ABA probably 50 years ago, you see someone at a table with a child saying, say red, say red. We have early intensive behavioral intervention. So this looks like a structured therapy program that helps incorporate lots of different life skills. So think about a very, very highly structured preschool setting. We have natural environment training, which is one of my favorite types of ABA to implement, and probably one that I use the most. So you're following a person around, guiding them through their daily routine, and really kind of embedding yourself within their everyday life. There's also verbal behavior intervention. So a lot of our kiddos have some communication deficits. So we use a lot of strategies within that type of intervention to help promote speaking or functionally communicating. We also have the Early Start Denver model, and that's to service young learners, and it uses a lot of play and natural environment teaching to help those kiddos learn. And we also have pivotal response training. So it's using a lot of natural environment learning to help guide a child based on their interests. So we kind of go alongside the child's interests, and then we embed a lot of opportunities for learning. And then probably one of the most common and we see most effective types of ABA is what we call NDBIs. So I love this type of intervention in specific, and we've had a lot of new research and data of how effective it is in providing care. So imagine if traditional ABA had kind of a marriage with the developmental psychology and play theory, and that's where you find a lot of natural developmental behavioral interventions. So you're getting a lot of the best principles of ABA of breaking down, structuring a routine, helping to work on a skill with repetition, using reinforcement, but really doing it based on the child's needs and within their everyday environment, trying to use play and using a lot more age-appropriate strategies for that child to be best served within that therapy realm. So the reason that it's important to note kind of all the different types of ABA is it's helpful to understand, and this is my big qualm with parents. Unfortunately, in South Florida in specific, we have a big issue with the quality of ABA. So we have lots and lots and lots of ABA providers. We don't generally see as many high quality providers. Even throughout the evolution of my field, I was chatting with Lori, I haven't seen, unfortunately, lots of quality ABA providers growing, and it's very important to know that high quality ABA is considered the gold standard of intervention, and it helps to make better a lot of those symptoms we see with autism that affects a learner in their everyday life. So this training has really helped to gear, how do I find a high quality provider and how do I partner with that person to then make sure my child is receiving the most effective intervention? It's not just necessarily used to help reduce inappropriate behaviors or make a child look more normal. I think it's very important to know that we really want to individualize the care to best serve that child and that family's needs. Our areas of development should really focus on how can we improve a child's ability to be safe in their settings, improve their quality of life, and how can we help better address the symptoms that impede that everyday life of autism. And so as an analyst, when I first meet a family, like, what do I look for first, right? I want to always emphasize safety. So the first thing I look to work alongside a family is making sure a child is safe. So what kind of falls under that safety umbrella? That would be making sure the child doesn't harm themselves, others, is running away in terms of being in danger, so eloping to dangerous places. Can the child integrate and attend to their everyday environment? That all falls under the safety umbrella to make sure that they have an understanding of what's going on around them, the dangers around them, and making sure that they stay safe. If I do not work on safety first, everything else is null and void. Because if your child does not have the ability to be safe, nothing else can spring out of that. Then the next thing I really try to work alongside the family with is, hey, what is affecting your quality of life? Now, in practicality, what does that look like? Is your child able to integrate into school settings? Are they able to sit down and share a meal with your family? Can they eat on their own? Have they been able to complete toilet training? Are they able to communicate their needs and wants to you? Those are all things that really affect our quality of life. Those are of even more utmost importance than, I would say, the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. If you're not able to wait, to understand that I wish I could give you the iPad 24/7, but that's not really a great idea for our overall development. And I really want to make sure you understand that I'm doing this for your good and not engage in any unsafe behaviors when I'm trying to have you understand that you can't have something at this point in time. And then the other thing that we address within ABA are what specifically for those diagnosed with autism is what are some of the impairments that autism causes in some areas of development. So is there some deficits in communication that we can help better support? How is your child able to socialize with peers around them and other adults around them? And then do they have any repetitive and restrictive patterns of behavior? So that difficulty maybe transitioning, the ability to attend to a task, the ability to interrupt restrictive routines. We want to make sure we help address some of those so that we can lower them so the child is better able to integrate into their environment. I want to really emphasize some of the examples that we would use for this. So let's think about things as teaching your child to learn stop, right? If your child isn't able to stop when they're asked and they're running into a street, that's a really unsafe behavior. I really want to work on that with families all the time. We all have to learn to accept no. It's a very unfortunate thing that even lots of adults that I know don't know how to accept the word no. So that's something I really want to target. How can I help your child become the most independent when it comes to their everyday routine? That means getting up, being able to do things for themselves, like dress themselves, be able to have a snack when they need to. How can they functionally communicate? So if your child is able to speak, then how do we support some of that? And how do we also use other strategies such as using gestures or low-tech pictorial systems or high-tech devices to make sure that they have an ability to communicate what their needs and wants are? How do you share life with others, and how do you do life with others? And how do you tolerate when changes come your way? Because we all have changes. I think COVID-19 was our big lifetime exercise in changes, I would say, for all of us. So just remember, kind of, that should be some of the order that some of your child's therapy and progression should have. We should always work on those prerequisite safety skills. And our number one goal, and this is something Lori and I share, is to work my way out of a job. At the first meeting, I say that I have done my job successfully if I'm able to work my way out of a job. And me working my way out of a job looks like you can do what I can do better than any therapist I can assign you, or even myself. You've grasped and learned the tools so that your child is able to learn from someone, and you're able to advocate for them without having a behaviorally trained instructor. I have a couple of families that are in that season of life right now, and it's just amazing when I participate in meetings and how I'm listening so much more than directing. And so that is really the goal, and should be the goal of every single provider, is I would like to empower you so that I can work my way out of a job. And fortunately, the more I do that, the more work I have, I've found throughout my career, but in a really wonderful way. And so let's start with the how if questions. I want to make sure everyone understands every parent has a PhD on who their child is. No one knows their children better than their parents. Now, being a mom myself, I understand that. No matter how many hours I spend with your child, I will never love and care for and understand them better than you do. So I think that's very important to keep in mind. I also think we have really great instincts that we're given as parents, and so trust them. Be brave and ask questions. I have always benefited in being a curious learner and having no shame to ask whatever question, whether it's silly or not, because that's the way that we learn. And by understanding what you don't know and asking for help and clarification, then we gain better skills to advocate. And the way that you do that is you become involved in order to become a very informed advocate. Every parent is their child's advocate, and my hope is always to train the parent to be the most informed advocate, so that then their child becomes their best advocate. And so keeping in mind, there are no silly questions, and I will make sure that you guys get reminded of that during the Q&A. So feel free to ask any question you want, whether it's embarrassing or not, or silly, because it's always a learning experience for someone else. Let me just take a peek at the chat. I just saw. Oh.
I'm going to, watch the chat box, and then
Perfect.
at the end we'll answer.
That sounds great.
Yeah, no worries. I'll take care of that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, because that's sometimes a little tough to do two things at once. So I want everyone to know, let's try to find and collaborate with providers that are high quality. So I was talking to Lori, and part of what my struggle was during the training is understanding, hey, you probably need to know not just the great qualities of a good provider, but you also have to understand what are some of the qualities of a poor or ill-trained provider. So one of the big things I like to talk about is people who have qualified and caring providers take a person-centered approach, and they understand and approach knowledge with integrity and compassion. So do not automatically trust anyone with your child's care. And that goes from a pediatrician, neurologist, ABA provider, speech and language pathologist, absolutely anyone. You are your child's advocate, and not that you want to go into any kind of appointment or meeting on the contrarian, but I always approach providers with great questions to also understand, how can you earn my trust? And over the times that we develop relationships and you're able to answer questions, then I kind of gain a better understanding of who's a qualified provider. I'm pretty sure that it's been common knowledge in South Florida, we have a very specific problem. We are the capital of fraud for absolutely everything. It's an unfortunate issue that also has touched the ABA world. Once ABA was approved to be provided by insurance providers, it became an industry. in many cases, and a lot of people who weren't qualified came into the field. We've gotten better with kind of getting rid of some people in the field. There's been lots of changes to some insurance reforms, but I want to make sure you guys have an understanding that we're still dealing with that legacy. And in South Florida, we probably are the highest place in the entire country with that problem. So it takes a very, very involved and informed parent to find a quality provider. There are very good quality providers in the area, but I think you got to dig a little bit deeper and ask better questions to know how that person is going to implement therapy for your child in specific. So let's talk about kind of what makes a great provider and what makes like not so good a provider. A great provider from the onstart always assumes a child's potential. And let me kind of explain what it means to assume potential versus competence. So assuming potential means I come in with the understanding that if the child has maybe the ideal learning strategies fit for them, they have the ability to possibly learn a skill and thrive at that skill. Someone who is a mediocre provider either thinks that person can't learn a skill or assumes that the same strategy is going to work for everyone and is really not up to date with different types of research methods that can really fit different types of learners. A mediocre provider only understands the medical model. That's kind of a lot of the stuff we knew in the past that we've come to understand better. So it's not, my job is not to fix or cure your child out of having autism, but rather understand that your child is neurodiverse and I want to learn how to use their strengths and weaknesses to best provide the treatment that I need to help them develop and work side along with you. So understanding that they're neurodiverse, which can encompass a lot of different things, right? A lot of our kiddos have some comorbidities and different needs sensorily with their learning, and also understanding there's lots of strengths that we can use for within their neurodiversity for their best development. So if your child really loves to play chess, like there's lots of different tools they can use while they're learning to play chess to better develop their language, their social skills, and other different skills. I would also say that a great ABA provider is family and child-centered. So they understand that a child is a whole child. What does that mean? That means I need to make sure that your child is getting great sleep. They're having a really proper diet. They are able to thrive in the right environment. They need to have rest and vacations. A lot of my families are very surprised and I'm like, when are you going on vacation? They need a vacation from me. I know that they need to not see me for a little bit so that they can be able to also develop and live. And also, how do we support the family? Because having intensive intervention is very taxing on a family. So how can we provide and point to different resources to also provide support to the family? A mediocre ABA provider is thinking that ABA can do everything. I am not a speech language pathologist. I am not an occupational therapist. So I need to learn to recognize my limitations and say, hey, I've seen how beneficial it is for a child to receive the proper services when needed. Here are some great people we can collaborate with that can also help support their needs. And I'm not just looking to give the treatment and continue to push a child when I know that there's other things at play that maybe they need support or help with. And what do you kind of see with more mediocre providers? They fail to listen. I think having a provider that is first a listener and ask questions is the most beneficial thing you'll ever have. I find that a lot of mediocre providers sometimes are even more rigid than a lot of the kiddos that we serve. And so understanding how they can be flexible, learn, admit when they don't know something and say, hey, you know what? That's a great question. Let me come back to it. I'm going to have a great team that I can consult to, or maybe I'll reach out to CARD or someone else that I can get better information from. So that's a really helpful understanding for you guys to say, okay, someone who does this is kind of more on the mediocre end and someone who's doing this is on the great end. Now, I want to make sure I give everyone some good, solid information, because if the more knowledge you have as a family, the better you'll be able to advocate and find the best provider for your child and then works alongside that provider. So I like to call this like my ABA therapy class 101. Even if you've done an RBT training, a lot of RBTs don't even know this. So I want to make sure that the families first and foremost know this. Due to a lot of the fraud and the insurance reforms that we've gone through in the last, especially 5 years, so this is like post-COVID, before ABA therapy can really begin for most learners, each learner needs a full diagnostic report, or what's called a comprehensive diagnostic evaluation, usually from an MD or a PhD. The reason why we need that is a lot of insurance providers are not covering unless there are a battery of tests completed to confirm the child's diagnosis. When I first started in the field, a pediatrician could fill out a scripted pad and just say 40 hours, and that would be enough for an insurance provider to cover services or a neurologist. So it's very, very important that whether you go to an MD or a PhD, that your child has a full diagnostic report. And every 2 or 3 years or so, until they hit kind of middle childhood, that they have another exam completed to also measure the progress and take a better whole picture understanding of where your child is at that time. And so after that is completed is when usually we can begin therapy services or providing ABA therapy services. And at the beginning, usually you'll have a BCBA complete an initial evaluation to assess a child's current areas of needs and their progress in specific areas of development. So everybody starts off ABA therapy usually with an evaluation. So first we have the complete diagnostic report completed by a psychologist or a neurologist or a developmental pediatrician. Then we will have our first evaluation completed by a BCBA. Now, based on that evaluation, that should encompass talking to a family, observing the child, completing some sort of assessment, and getting a good records review, the BCBA should recommend different types of services for that person's treatment package. So a lot of people think that an ABA therapy is just a specific RBT or a therapist working with your child. No, we get a big packet from the insurance providers that we work to help alongside that child. And those services that your child is recommended and goals should very much be individualized to them. So no matter how long I do this, there are no two learners that are the same. So no one's plan should look like absolutely someone else's. So now there's similarities. You can have some recommendations that we make based on someone's areas of need, but your plan should never look like exactly someone else's. Now, within your child's recommended treatment plan, a BCBA can recommend different types of services for that large treatment package. So I'm going to go into what I like to call medical ease, but it's very important for families to understand kind of what is enveloped in a treatment package. So we have codes 97151, 97153, 97155, and 97156. Not to worry, there's a chart that'll explain everything very easily shortly. The other thing I want to make sure that everyone has an understanding with is in the state of Florida, we do not have licensure for behavior analyst. We are credentialed by a larger nationwide board. And so every BCBA should be credentialed with that board. It's very easy. You can log on to the BACB website to look up your analyst's certification, how long they've been an analyst, and to make sure that their certification is valid. I always like to recommend families, you should just do this in general, no matter what. We have nothing to hide, and we have to register and keep our credentials up to date every 2 years. So it's very helpful when families know this is our credentialing organization. It's also important that you all know this is also where if there's complaint or you have a suspicion of a fraud or anything else, this would be the organization that you would report to. Now, let's talk a little bit about those medical codes and what do they mean. So 97151 is the code that authorizes some of that evaluation and treatment planning. Then you'll see another code, 97153 or 54, requested on a treatment plan. That's kind of the traditional therapy package that you see working one therapist with your child or maybe doing a social skills group. 97155 is considered supervision of the RBT completing the recommended goals with the RBT. So that is a code that only a BCBA can, or a BCABA usually complete. And then we have another package and another goal that we ask for, which is 97156. A lot of families don't even know that this code exists. And it's actually necessary and encouraged by so many insurance providers, which is the treatment of parent or caregiver guidance. So this is when an analyst is working directly with the family to help guide and implement and help to generalize all those skills that they're learning in therapy. And so it's helpful for you guys also to kind of see and recognize what are some recommended amounts. An evaluation can last anywhere between 4 to 18 hours every 6 to 12 months. So that's what you'll generally see recommended. And I've put in parentheses who's supposed to complete that. That's the board certified behavior analyst. Let me back up a little bit. I like to also have families understand what's the structure. I like to compare it to a doctor and a model. A doctor and a nurse model. So a BCBA would be your doctor. So it's the person prescribing and writing the treatment, and the RBT, or the behavior therapist, is more like a nurse. So they implement all of the treatment goals written. So that way everyone can have a good understanding of whose is what role and what. So the RBT, so that nurse kind of provider, is the one who will then provide your child and complete the goals written within that plan. We have two types of treatment packages. One can be comprehensive, which means your child is working on various developmental areas of need. And then we also have focus, which is a very limited amount of goals and needs. Usually, if you have a focus plan, your child is receiving between 10 to 20 direct hours of therapy. A comprehensive can go anywhere from 20 to 40 hours a week of intensive therapy by week. All right. And then let's talk about the other two codes. So the 97155, your child's RBT should be supervised at a minimum of 5% of all the times they work with that child, or up to 20% of the time. So I'll give you an example. That means if your child has 20 hours of therapy every week, your BCBA should be supervising that RBT, completing that therapy program for at least 1 hour. I become very afraid when families tell me they don't know who their BCBA is. They've only seen them once a month, when they have especially those very intense treatment programs. That is a huge red flag. You should know your analyst. I have a small number of clients left, but the clients that I have, they see me on a weekly basis. They know everything that's kind of going on with their child, or they'll speak to me on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis, depending on kind of what hours that child is getting. But they are very familiar and understand I am under the supervision. The RBT is under me, so I'm very much supervising and know up to date of what's going on in terms of their child's protocol. And in my opinion, the most important service of all, and the one I love and adore giving, is 97156. All providers, including Medicaid, require that there should be some involvement from caregivers. The reason why they do that is there's very, very good research showing that the more involvement and guidance parents receive from qualified treated clinicians, the better outcomes and success their children have. So if we're learning, for example, to teach your child to communicate, and we're able to help and guide you to do that in the home, your child's then not only getting, 2 or 3 hours of therapy a day, but then they're also receiving that support and the same strategies and practice from you. So the more I find that parents are involved, the quicker I'm out of a job. So that's the other reason I encourage that. I also want everyone to know that this code isn't specific just to parents, for example. I've been able to work with grandmas, nannies, teachers, using there's lots of different personnel that is considered a caregiver. So it's, just because maybe you're not home, but maybe your parent is, they also can be involved in caregiver guidance. Actually, in fact, I think my nannies and my grandparents have been like the most amazing and most participatory of all when we've had that. Now, you kind of saw what a medical model treatment package looks like according to the code. I also want you guys to understand, what does an ideal treatment package look like? Well, it looks like having an evaluation every 6 to 12 months, revising that treatment plan according to your child's progress. It should look like maybe direct therapy with your child on a one-on-one basis, or maybe with other kiddos involved. It should really have very guided supervision of that personnel and understanding if the RBT is completing that treatment progress and those goals in the way that the BCBA wrote and designed. And it should involve a lot of caregiver guidance. It should have, that means, hey, I meet on a weekly basis with a lot of my families and I talk about how their child is progressing. What are their areas of strengths and areas of need? It also should involve multidisciplinary coordination of care. So when I said a little bit ago, I'm not an occupational therapist, I'm not a speech language pathologist, but it is my responsibility, if a child has those members on their team, for me to call them, to go to sessions, to say, hey, I'm having a really hard time getting John to really coordinate his hands so that he can close a book. What are some ways that I can help him better close a book or open a container? How can I help keep him regulated during the day, or recognize signs that he may need a sensory break? it's really helpful for us to cross collaborate and know, hey, this is the communication protocol that we're working on. Is that the same? Is that they're using in speech? Because if we can coordinate our goals to be the same and really help drive the child's learning together, it's really the ideal way to do that. And the other thing I think that should be involved in a treatment package is your analyst should help you learn how to become a better advocate and seek community resources. So understanding kind of what is an IEP, what is the responsibility of a school's role versus a BCBA's role in the medical model. Hey, I don't know how to do something, but maybe I can call CARD and they have a very good reference on how to fill out a med waiver, or having other additional resources that may be available for your child. So that's really important that your analyst also learns to point you in the right direction, because we do have help and support in the community that's been built out really beautifully in the last few years. Of course, we need more, but in the progression of my decades in the field, I've seen how wonderfully it's grown. So a lot of families just don't know it's out there. And I really encourage people to look for that so that you can have the best development for your child. And so how do you become involved and advocate? Well, I would say the hardest skill to teach anyone, period, end of story, is learning how to play, and play in a way that connects with your child, that's age appropriate. So I encourage every family to learn to play and interact with your child every single day. That is the best vehicle to learn, to connect, and to build quality relationships and attachment. I would encourage all families to watch and sit on your child's sessions. And my big red flag is you run away from any provider, anyone who does not let you be involved or participate or observe your child's therapy. That is a red flag. I will not leave my own daughter with anyone if I'm not able to watch and observe. And the other thing is then you're not really able to learn. I know in the past, a lot of providers used to say, well, it's kind of disruptive. And it is our job, and we are trained on how to incorporate families so it doesn't become disruptive. And if it does, we sit down and have a conversation about it. I can tell you there's been plenty of times where I've had, it's always my poor abuelas, who hear sometimes a kiddo crying because they're just having some frustration working through something, and they come in and kind of interrupt them. And we've really chatted and said, hey, just give them a little while longer. You can sit next to them and support them. Maybe we can teach them how to ask for a break. And they become really great, involved advocates for their children. But please, please, please run away from anyone who tells you you shouldn't observe or isn't involved. I would also encourage lots of you to kind of reach out to, if you already are receiving services, reach out to your analyst and designate a time bi-weekly or weekly that you can monitor your child's progress. They can demonstrate to you how to use new strategies or help implement a plan of care at home. Everyone that I see has a designated time in the week that I chat with them, so it makes it really easy. So I have a family I see every Thursday at 2 o'clock, that's our time. And we connect every Thursday on Tuesday, and they've learned to set that up as a rhythm. So they become very aware. And of course, if something comes up, they always are free to call me or email me. But because we have a weekly meeting, they also look forward to also kind of sharing a lot of their concerns and reviewing with me what's the progress when I'm not there. Really feel comfortable with your provider to share what are your goals and what's important to you and your family to get them to be successful. So I've had the privilege of working a lot internationally. And one of the goals that comes up a lot in different places where I work is, hey, I just want my child to be able to sit through a meal and participate in a family dinner. I think that's a great goal. That's an easy goal for me to write and help support and work through. But unless the family started sharing that, I wouldn't know that's an important goal. So whatever's important to the rhythm of your family, sometimes that means, hey, I want my son or daughter to be able to sit through 10 minutes of singing because I want them to come to church or to synagogue with me. That's a great goal. So just share what's important and what's the rhythm and value of your family that we can help work and support. As a company, we make it a requirement that our parents review and participate in their child's treatment planning. I think it's a great rule of practice to do that. So make sure you ask your provider, hey, where's my son's current treatment plan? What goals are we working on? Can you help me understand that a little bit? I will give a word of caution. Our treatment plans are generally written in a medical model. That means that you're going to find a lot of funny language in there, and we kind of have to highlight the best and worst of your child to get them the best treatment package with the insurance company. So I really would have an analyst help you guide and sit through that, because it's really a dense document and it's not an easy read. but I think it's very important for families to see what are the goals, the progress that that person is writing in that treatment plan. Be brave, ask questions. We're going to do this now. I really, really encourage everyone to also join a support group, a community parent. There's lots of different types of support groups, but learn that you're not alone in this journey. There's lots of families that have started, completed, are in the process of walking this journey. And the best ideas I've ever had are from other families. And so knowing who are the best providers, who, what are some cool, neat programs that are after school kind of going on. So really joining that support group is really critical. And I would say lead. Over time that you have a lot of these sessions and this guidance from this team, what you should do is have a goal that you will be the team leader and the advocate for your child, and that we are your partners. We are not directing your child's care. We really want to partner with you. And always remember, you're going to be there forever. I can come and go, but the more involved and the more informed you become, the better everything really thrives, because that's the person who's going to be there forever, which is your family. All righty, everybody. I think we're possibly going to do an eval, but